In your games, you'll probably want to be able to pick up objects. So let's have a look at how we can set that up. So here I am inside of the pickup items demo scene. And what we're going to do is go over to the Exploration Toolkit Manager, go into its controller systems, and you'll see here we have the pickup controller. Now this prefab is located in the core prefab systems controllers folder. So if you're in a new scene, simply drag that in. And on the pickup controller, we only really have one property that is required to be assigned, and that is the hold origin. This is essentially going to be an empty game object, which is where the item that is picked up is going to be a child of. Now, most of the time, this is going to be as a child of your camera. So if we go to our player controller and go into their main camera, you can see as a child of the main camera, we have this empty game object here called the pickup hold origin, and I've assigned that to this property right here. Now, whenever we pick up items, they are going to be made a child of this and positioned here. Also, on our pickup controller, you can modify the placement properties. Okay, we're going to go over placement in a second, but placement essentially is where you can place back down objects that you pick up. For example, in puzzle games, you might want to place objects down on certain slots to trigger events. So let's have a look at what makes up a pick-upable object. Let's select this barrel here, for example. With this barrel, you'll see we have three components: an interactable to detect when the player is looking at the object, a pick-upable component, which is what actually allows or marks this object as being available to be picked up, and a collider to basically define the interaction bounds. So we've already looked at interactables and we don't really need to look at a collider, so let's focus on the pick-upable component. First of all, you'll want to enable can pick up in world. This means that when we look at a pick-upable item and interact with it, it will trigger a pickup event. Some pick-upable items can also be equipped from your inventory, so you might want to enable that here. In the hotbar inventory, for example, you might want to be able to equip a weapon or a flashlight, and that is done via the pick-upable system. Next, we have the holding section. So again, what I mentioned before was when we pick up an item, and let's just press play to see how that works. Whenever we pick up an item, it is set as a child of that hold origin. So for example, just to the right of the main camera is where it is picked up. So over in the holding section here, we have the hold scale. Some items may be too small or too big, so you might want to adjust their scale when they're in your hands to make it look a bit nicer, so you can adjust that there. Also, the point from which the item is held is from its transform origin, so it would be by default down here at the bottom of the barrel, but I want to be holding the barrel from the middle. So what I can do is create an empty game object called hold pivot, position that where I want, and then on the pickupable component, assign that to the hold pivot. So now instead of picking up the item from the bottom of the barrel here, it is now going to be picked up from the hold pivot, which is a bit higher up. We also have a colliders to disable list. Things that you're picking up, it's probably going to have colliders on it, and you probably don't want those colliders interacting with the player being so close. So simply drag all the colliders here, and those will be disabled when the item is picked up. Then we can move on to placement. Now, placement, there's quite a few different things that is involved in this system. Let's just go over the two different types. So, when you pick up an object, one type of placement you might have is world placement. This is where you can hold down the E key. Just wait for this material to load up here. Yep, there we go. So when you hold down E and place down an item, you can see a little preview image, and when I let go, it is going to place the object down. We can pick it back up, place it down. That is essentially world placement. And world placement also has the ability to detect if there are obstructions. So see here, if I move it under the leg, it turns red, meaning I cannot place down the barrel. But if it is blue, we can place it down. Okay, so that is world placement. So we'll place that there. The next type of placement is place point placement. This is where an object, a pickupable, can be placed in a specific location. So if I open this chest here, for example, and hold down E, you'll see I can't actually place it down here, but if I hover over the chest, it is going to snap into that position there because I have defined a place point on the chest here. And there we go. We can also then trigger events. So you can see this can be good in the sense that you might have a statue that you need to place on a pressure plate to trigger an event. Over here, we have place points, but instead of having a specific pick-upable assigned to a specific place point, we can have pick-upables assigned to place points by tag. So for example, this chess piece has the tag chess piece, and this board, each of these slots can take any chess piece. So you can see I can pick it up, and it will snap to these positions right here. Okay, also with world placement, when you're placing an object down, you can use the scroll wheel to adjust its rotation. So if you want to be very precise with how it is placed down, you can use that right there. Okay, so let's have a look at the placement properties here. So first of all, you can basically define if this object can be placed down. By default, it is true. Then what you can do is define the placement type. This right now is set to world, but if we set it to place point, you can see the properties change. Let's look at world placement to start off with. World placement, like I mentioned before, this allows us to place it anywhere down in the world. And if you enable do placement obstruction check, whenever you're placing it down, it will check to see if there are any colliders of the layer mask within the defined bounds here. So you can see this little orange box around our barrel. This right here is the bounds. So I can adjust it here, the properties, the extents, all of that here. And this is essentially what is going to be checked each frame for colliders when we are placing the barrel down. Now, there's also do snap placement position. What this means is that when we are placing the object down, it is going to snap to the nearest 0.1 units. So let's see that in action. And this can be really good for if you want grid placement, or if you want to maybe have a room the player can design, but you want it to snap to specific locations. As you can see, when I place it down, it is going to snap to 0.1 units. Or if I change this to be, let's go 0.5, this is now going to snap to 0.5 increments like so. Okay, which is pretty cool. So that is a look at setting up world placement. How about setting up place points? Well, if we select this gem here, for example, you'll see that the placement type has been set to place point. And there is a place point tag we can assign here, but the gem does not use that. Instead, what we need to do now is look at the place points themselves. So I'm going to select the gem box here, and as a child of it, I have a gem place point. This right here is just a collider and a place point component. And on the place point component, we have a number of different properties. First of all, the placement query. This defines what objects are allowed to be placed here. By default, it will be desired pick-upable, and here we can define what pick-upable can be placed here. So this means that only the gem can be placed in this place point slot. Okay, nothing else will fit. You can then also define a pivot. So if you want an offset to where the object is placed, you can define that there, as well as a scale. So if we place the gem in here, we can change the scale so it is maybe half the amount, half the size or whatever. And we can also determine if we want to start it placed or not. Then what we can have a look at is the chessboard over here. Now, if we select a chess piece, you'll see that over in its pick-upable component, it has the placement type of place point and a place point tag assigned of chess piece. Now, if we select the chessboard, you'll see as a child, it has a bunch of different place points defined here. And these place points have their query set to tag. And the tag has been defined as chess piece. So what this means is that any pick-upable object with the tag assigned of chess piece can be placed here. Okay, so you can see we have the two different methods, the direct one-to-one interaction or the tag option, which you can choose. Okay, so yeah, there are varied ways to pick up objects and place them back down in the world. Now, in our little example scene here, let's have a look at how we can actually set this barrel up to be picked up. So first things first, we need to add the actual pickup system into our game. So if we go over to Exploration Toolkit, Core, Prefabs, Systems, Controllers, you'll see here we have the pickup controller. Now let's open up our Exploration Toolkit Manager and drag that in as a child. Now what we need to do is define the hold origin, and you can see here if it's not set, there's going to be a little warning. So if I open up my player controller, their head, their main camera, as a child they have a pickup hold origin which I can drag in like so. We can also define some of the other settings here, such as how far away can we place the object, the max placement angle, so it's going to basically not place it on any slope greater than 20 degrees, the rate at which we rotate an object with the scroll wheel, and the layer mask for placement. You can also change the material that gets assigned to the object when we are placing it down for a valid placement and an invalid placement. By default, it is the blue and the red material as we saw in the examples before. So now that we have our controller in the scene, let's go ahead and set this object to be picked up. So I'm going to select the barrel. Now we already have the interactable, which is required to detect interactions, as well as a collider. Let's now go ahead and add the pick upable component here. Now, on the pick upable component, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and disable can equip from inventory, since this is not really going to be an equipable object. Down in the holding, we're going to skip that for now, except for colliders to disable. Let's go ahead and drag the box collider in just so it doesn't interfere with the player when they are holding it. Then down in placement, we can define, for example, if the object can be placed down. For now, let's just disable that. Now, before we press play, let's open up our interactable component, go to events, and delete this onInteract event that we set up before because we don't want this barrel disappearing on us. So we're going to press play. And now when we walk up to the barrel and interact with it, we should have it in our hands. And there we go. Now again, you can see the barrel is pretty high up, so what I'm going to do is add in a pivot for holding. So here for holding, you can see I have a hold pivot. I'm going to create an empty game object as a child of the barrel called hold pivot, and I'm just going to move it up to about midway. Then I can assign the hold pivot right here. And so if I press play and pick up the barrel, it is now going to be holding it from the center rather than from the bottom. And there we go. The barrel may also appear a bit big in your hands. I personally probably like it like this because already a big object, but what we can do is go to the hold scale and maybe bring this down to about 0.7 in scale. So it's going to be 30% less large when it is in our hands, but don't worry, that scale will be reset when it's placed back down. And there we go. So let's look at now setting up object placement. So down here in the placement section, I'm going to enable can place down. And then I'm going to set the placement type to be world, so we can place it anywhere we want. I'm going to also enable do placement obstruction check, so it's going to make sure that we're not trying to place this object inside of another object. And this little orange cube right here is going to be the obstruction bounds. So I'm just going to get into a little side view here, and we can then modify the extent so it fits roughly the size of the barrel. So 0.3 along the X, 0.3 along the Z. The Y, we might go 0.4, and then we can bring it up in height here. Actually, I'm going to bring it down to 0.3, and just something like that. Okay, it doesn't have to be too precise, just a rough shape to detect any intersecting colliders, and then press play. And now we should be able to pick up this object, and then with holding E, we should be able to place it back down in the world. So pick it up, hold down E, and you can see, just ignore that material right there. It is still compiling. There we go. So I can pick up the barrel, hold down E. You can see it is blue, showing a successful or an available placement position. But if I hold it underneath the table here, where it's intersecting, it is going to result in some issues. And there we go. Now, we can also add in some sound effects for this. So how do we do that? Well, on our barrel here, if we go to the pick upable component, I'm just going to close these little things here by clicking on them. I'm going to open up sounds. Now here you'll see we can define a pickup sound and a place down sound. So for the pickup sound, I am simply going to search for pickup and then heavy. And then for place down, I'm going to look for place down or heavy, put down heavy, and there we go. And we've got a couple different ones here. Okay. Now, the next step is to go ahead and create an audio source, but we don't have to do that. You can see here we have an audio source field, but we also have this, use global audio source. I'm going to go ahead and enable that. Now, if I go ahead and press play, what you'll notice is that whenever I pick up the barrel and place it down, those sounds are going to play, even though I have not assigned an audio source to the barrel. So, how is that working? Well, this is working via the audio or the global audio source system. So if we open up our manager and go down to global audio source, this right here essentially acts as an audio source to play any sound we want through our headphones, okay? And this can be good for things such as picking up items which don't really need a directional sound. simply, you communicate with this component and it plays a sound. It's as simple as that. And this makes it so you don't have to worry about having dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of audio sources in your scene for each little finicky object. They all share the same one. So yeah, there we go. And also down inside of events for the pickupable, you can connect events for when the object is picked up, when it is placed back down, or for when it is used. And what on use means is when we press F with it in our hands, that is essentially using the object. So if you have a torch, for example, you could press F to turn it on or off. And as an example, let's go ahead and just disable the barrel when we press F with it in our hands. Okay, so I'm going to drag in the barrel here into the onUse event and set the game object to be setActiveFalse. Now, if I press play, we can pick up the barrel, and then when I press F with it in my hands, it should go ahead and disappear, and there we go. So you can of course connect that up to a separate script, which might turn a torch on and off, a weapon to shoot, anything that you want to happen.